and welcome to the BNP Paribas Asset Management Talking Heads podcast. Every week, Talking Heads will bring you in-depth insights and analysis through the lens of sustainability on the topics that really matter to investors. In this episode, we'll be discussing investment strategies focused on the climate. I'm Daniel Morris, Chief Market Strategist, and I'm joined by Martina Jung, Portfolio Manager for European Equities. Welcome, Martina, and thanks for joining me.
Hello, Daniel. Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Martina, I think we appreciate that over the last several years, investors have been looking more and more at thematic investing, trying to move beyond investing in particular regions or countries or different sectors and really trying to find an angle where they can get better than benchmark returns. Now, one of the key developments, though, with increasing awareness of climate change is ideally investors can not only find a thematic strategy, but also something that has a benefit or a positive impact for the planet, which is where I think climate-focused investment strategies come into play. So if we step back and think about one of the key drivers for the increased awareness around climate was, of course, the Paris Agreement of about 8 years ago. That's been a long while. Could you maybe update our listeners on what's happened since then and the importance of those developments for investors?
It's true. First of all, it's worth noting that the Paris Agreement on climate change was a decisive moment, as it highlighted the urgency of limiting global warming to no more than 2 and even 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. Indeed, since then, a lot of measures have been put in place to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to decarbonize the economy. These measures involve all governments, companies, and also financial markets. For example, in 2019, the European Union committed to the objective of achieving carbon neutrality by 2050. What does that mean? With the commitment, the European Union wants to become an economy with net zero greenhouse gas emissions. And exactly that means it wants to remove an equal amount of CO2 from the atmosphere as is released into it. Then, shortly thereafter, in 2020, the European Union introduced the so-called Paris-aligned benchmarks. These are tools that help investors to construct portfolios in line with the transition to a low-carbon economy. Therefore, the Paris-aligned benchmarks are part of a framework to encourage sustainable investments. So last but not least, in August 2022, new requirements came into force also for banks and investment firms regarding the integration of sustainability into their suitability assessment and into their product governance. So the European Union's MiFID II directive, under this framework, the financial advisors and distributors have now to ask their clients to specify their sustainability preferences, and they are at their side required to structure and offer products accordingly.
That's been very helpful to update us on what's happened, particularly on the legislative and the government side since the Paris Agreement. Clearly, then the authorities have taken action, but I think, as you point out, it involves all of us, and in that it's asset managers, companies. Can you share with us a bit what BNP Paribas Asset Management has done in this respect?
Yes, of course. And BNP Paribas Asset Management has indeed also made a move. We have been developing our net zero strategy. Initially, we have signed up to the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative. And shortly thereafter, we have published our own net zero roadmap. We have developed a range of investment solutions that integrate environmental, social, and governance criteria. And one of the solutions that we believe specifically contributes to the group's net zero objective is our climate-aligned investment strategy.
Okay, that kind of is a natural segue then to a next question, Martina. What exactly is the climate-aligned investment strategy? And then probably more importantly, why should clients invest in a portfolio aligned with the objectives of the Paris Agreement?
Well, with our climate-aligned investment strategy, we integrate the fight against global warming into the investment process. We invest with a climate objective, in fact. It is about investing in European companies whose decarbonization strategy is aligned with the objectives of the Paris Agreement. To identify the companies eligible for our strategy, we have developed in-house a proprietary climate alignment assessment methodology. As part of our methodology, we assess first the climate credentials of a company. So if a company is not disclosing its carbon emissions and does not have emission reduction targets, it is excluded from our investment universe. Those companies which disclose data and have set climate targets will get to the next step of the methodology, the evaluation of the climate performance. When it comes to the climate performance evaluation, we first check if a company is part of a sector for which institutions, such as, for example, the International Energy Agency, have defined a specific decarbonization pathway. If that is the case, we assess whether the company's strategy is aligned with this pathway. If a company instead belongs to a sector for which such a pathway does not exist, which is the case for healthcare, for example, we assess whether its decarbonization plans are aligned with the requirements of the United Nations body in charge of climate change, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. But in addition to that, the respect of the European Union's Paris-aligned benchmark standard, which I have mentioned earlier, is an essential part of our climate assessment methodology. It is of significant importance when it comes to the company analysis and also to the portfolio construction stages of the investment process. At the company analysis level, the respect of the Paris-aligned benchmark standard leads to the exclusion of all companies in the European energy sector due to their exposure to carbon, oil, and gas. At the portfolio construction stage, we have to ensure that the portfolio has a carbon footprint that is at least 50% below that of the benchmark at all times. On top of that, we work to reduce the carbon intensity of the portfolio by at least 7% per year. And also we aim for a minimum exposure to sectors highly exposed to climate change issues, which has to be at least equal to that of the portfolio's benchmark. Also, our methodology incorporates an ambitious ESG approach. As a result of that, we exclude companies with the worst performances as far as ESG practices are concerned, and we exclude companies which have a higher than 10% exposure to ESG controversial activities. This could be, for example, alcohol or weapons. Needless to say, that the company will only be selected for our climate-aligned portfolio if the required decarbonization strategy and ESG credentials do come with a sound financial profile. So why clients should invest in a portfolio aligned with the objectives of the Paris Agreement? Well, in fact, we believe it's an opportunity to invest in companies with a climate-friendly strategy. In our view, such a portfolio also helps when it comes to identifying future risks, but it's also a way to exploit the long-term opportunities that fighting climate change creates. And finally, it allows investors to leverage the strong support from regulators and policymakers in the fight against global warming.
If I can summarize some of the key points that you shared with us, Martina, you highlighted some of the really key developments that have occurred since the Paris Agreement. So, for example, the EU committing to carbon neutrality by 2050. BNP Paribas Asset Management is trying to do its part by signing up to the Net Zero Asset Managers Initiative. Now, the way you try to take this forward within your own team, when you think about climate investing strategies, for example, you try to integrate the fight against global warming into your investment process so that you can invest in companies with a positive climate impact. And the key interest for investors then is that it gives them an opportunity to invest in companies with a climate-friendly strategy, but also exploit the long-term opportunities that you see that fighting climate change will create. Well, Martina, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you as well very much, Daniel.
That's it for this week's episode of Talking Heads. If you would like more information, please reach out to your BNP Paribas Asset Management contact or check out Viewpoint, our website for investment insights at viewpoint.bnpparibas-am.com. For those listeners who have devices with Alexa, you can ask Alexa to enable investment insights or search for investment insights on Amazon under the category Alexa Skills. You've been listening to the BNP Paribas Asset Management Talking Heads podcast with me, Daniel Morris, and Martina Jung. Please do join me next week. Until then, take care.
This presentation includes a discussion on current market events and is not intended as investment advice or an offer of products or services by BNP Paribas Asset Management. Please keep in mind that the information and analysis in this presentation is only current as of the publication date.